All right, so section 3.4, ladies and gentlemen, is the quadratic formula. So the quadratic formula, I'll call it QF here, can be used to solve any quadratic equation once it has been written in the standard form, which is ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. And it is given by the formula x is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So we're going to do a couple of examples using this, and we'll see that it does work for anything. Remember, the plus or the minus is going to make it if I have two solutions. So example 1, solve 3x squared plus 4x equals 10 using the quadratic formula. So first put it in standard form, which I did for you. 3x squared plus 4x minus 10 is equal to 0. So if we look at that, then we know that our a is equal to 3, our b is equal to 4, and our c is equal to negative 10. All right. So now all the quadratic formula means is I'm just going to plug that in there. So my suggestion to you, ladies and gentlemen, is whenever you replace a variable with a number, put parentheses around it, because sometimes a lot of people will forget that a negative times a negative is a positive. So I'm going to have negative. I have 4, so I'm putting parentheses around it, plus or minus the square root of 4 squared minus 4. A is 3, C is negative 10, and all of that is over 2 times A, which is 3. Okay, so if we simplify that, I'll get negative 4 plus or minus the square root of 136 over 6, which will reduce down to negative 4 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 34 over 6, which will give me, now if on this one right here, I can factor out a 2 on everything, so that will be negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 34 over 3. And, excuse me, from there, read the directions, see if it tells you to round to the nearest hundredth or nearest thousandths. If it doesn't tell you, we'll find out, won't we? So on this one here, I'll plug it into your calculator exactly as you see it, and I'll get that x is approximately 1.28 and x is approximately negative 2.61. Because remember, I still have to go above, so negative 2 plus the square root of 34, and then I'll do the bottom, negative 2 minus the square root of 34. So that will give us 2 answers. Now they're going to show us here on the next page how to simplify that even farther, and we can figure out how many solutions there are going to be. I wish they would have done that first, but they didn't. All right. Second one, solve 4x squared plus 3x equals negative 13x minus 16 using the quadratic formula. So again, I'm going to put everything on one side. So 4x squared, well, plus 3x. I'm going to bring the negative 13 over to the other side, so it's going to become positive. So I'll have 3x plus 13x, or 16x. And when I bring the negative 16 over to the other side of the equal sign, that becomes plus 16. And now we have it set equal to 0, which is what we have to do to use the quadratic formula. So again, if you can simplify, simplify. All right, so if we look at this, we know that we can factor out a 4. What I'll be left with is x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. All right. So now remember, I can divide both sides by 4. So if I divide both sides by 4, I'll just get x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 0. So again, in this case, our a is equal to 1, our b is equal to 4, and our c is equal to 4. Plug it into the equation. X is equal to negative 4 plus or minus the square root of b squared, which is so 4 squared, minus 4 times a times c, all of that over 2 times a. All right. So if I work that out, I'm going to get negative 4 plus or minus, well, 4 squared is 16. 4 times 1 times 4 is 16. So 16 minus 16 is going to give me the square root of 0, if you want to think about it that way, over 2. But the square root of 0 is 0. So it's just going to equal negative 4 over 2. Or our x is going to equal negative 2. All right, and then 3, solve 5x squared plus 2x minus 1, equals negative 1 using the quadratic formula. Again, we have to take and get everything on one side in standard form. So if I bring the negative 1 over to the other side, it becomes a plus 1. And again, I'm going to set that equal to 0. So in this case, a is equal to 5, b is equal to 2, c is equal to 1. Let's just plug it in. X is equal to negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 2 squared minus 4 times 5 times 1. Remember, that's 4ac. All of that is divided by 2 times a, which is 5. All right, so on this one here, let's see, I'll have negative 2 plus or minus the square root of, well, 2 squared is 4, and then 4 times 5 times 1, that's 20. So 4 minus 20 will give me 16. So I'll have negative 16 under the radical this time, and all of that is over 10. All right, now remember, what happens when I have a negative under the radical? I can now make it as an I. So 2 plus or minus, well, what is the square root of 16? That's 4. Since it's a whole number, I'll put it in front of the I. And again, that's going to be over 10. So now, same thing here. Think, what can I factor out? I can factor out a 2 on the top. So I'll get that x is equal to 2 divided by 10. So I'll get negative 1 plus or minus 2i over 5. Again, reduce whenever you can. All right, and then let's talk about so what's under the radical symbol, all right? The expression under the radical sign is called the discriminant and can be used to determine the number and type of solutions of the equation. So if we see that b squared minus 4ac is greater than 0, we know we're going to have two real solutions. So if you look at the first one there, 136 is greater than 0, so we had two solutions. If b squared minus 4ac is equal to 0, then we're going to have one solution, and again, that's going to be one x-intercept. And again, that's what the second example had. The square root of 0 was 0. So b squared minus 4ac was equal to 0, and that gave us one solution. And then finally, if it's less than, it'll give us two imaginary ones. Remember, I told you earlier that imaginary solutions don't cross the x-axis at all. And I kind of said it could also have gone down this way and this way, right? Or even in this quadrant. Somewhere it just doesn't cross the x-axis. So again, I've told a lot of students all the time, I still will do the discriminant first. That kind of lets me know what I have to do. So let's do a couple of them here. So in example 4, it says find the discriminant of the quadratic equation and describe the number and types of solutions of the equation. So on this one here, well, I can't factor out anything. So I know that A is equal to, and I'll put it under here again, A is equal to 25, B in this case is equal to negative 20, and C is equal to 4. Okay, so our discriminant again, which is b squared minus 4ac is equal to negative 20 squared minus 4 times 25 times 4. All right, now you can plug it in your calculator, or you can say, well, negative times a negative is a positive. 20 times 20 is 400. 4 times 25 is 100. 100 times 4 is 400. So 400 times 400 is equal to 0. All right. So we know, according to what we see up above, we're going to have one real solution. All right. So again, here's the nice thing. Now you've got what's under the radical already done. So now we just plug it in. So remember, it's negative b, so negative 20 plus or minus, and I'll just put it again under the discriminant. We have 0, which we know is going to go away, over 2 times 25. All right. So on the top, a negative times a negative is a positive. So I'll have 20 over 50. If you remember, if I have matching zeros on the top and the bottom, I can cancel them. So my answer will now equal 2/5. And again, this is where we have to decide, does big ideas like you to keep it in a fraction or a decimal? All right. Guess we'll find out. All right. So let's do one more here. I just did 2 for them. Yeah. So on this one here, A is equal to 1. B is equal to 2. C is equal to 6. So again, if we do our discriminant, again, I'll write it down for you, b squared minus 4ac. So in this case, it's going to be 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6. Again, 2 squared is 4, minus 4 times 1 times 6 is minus 24. So we'll get negative 20. So according to up above, that's less than 0. So we know we're going to get 2 imaginary solutions. All right, so when we know we're going to get 2 imaginary solutions, we know there's got to be an I. So again, look how easy it is once I've done the discriminant. So I'll have negative b plus or minus the square root of negative 20. And that'll be over 2 times 1, or just 2. Okay, so we know that we can write this as negative 2 plus or minus, let's see here, why don't I go a different color here for you? Because remember, the square root of 20, I can write as the square root of 4 times the square root of 5. The square root of 4 is 2. 5's prime, so I have to keep it by itself. So that's what we should get there. So this will be 2. But what about that negative, ladies and gentlemen? That was an I, right? I just did the 20 part because it had already technically taken out the I for you. And then I'll have root 5 over 2. So now again, think what I just told you. If I factored out a 2, I could divide the 2's. So that would give me negative 1 plus or minus I root 5. And that's my final answer for that one. Pretty straightforward today. Quadratic formula is one of the easiest things to use once you get used to plugging it in your calculator.